This one's gonna get even weirder. However you wanna term it. Sorry for all these strange noises in like the interlude slash beginning and end of the talks. I try to minimize them the most, and it's easier to just not bump the mic or have it in a stable position so that I don't have to move it or whatever. And it's easier than going into the audio software after extracting the audio from the video file and managing the peaks, because this particular mic and the way everything seems to work is that if there's going to be peaks, there's like 30 or 40 of them, and I have to go in and highlight each one and reduce the amplitude in order to stabilize the whole recording, the leveling, so that I can then amplify the whole thing, because it's never loud enough. So I should have had water. A few things I'm going to talk about here. I'm going to start off with some basic concepts. It's going to lead back into what I have been talking about or speaking about, and I'm going to use a bit of soft disclosure with a recent movie I've watched to help explain some of the concepts that we were shown, and as well, if you're a thinker or a feeler, however you want to look at it, some of what you'll have determined or concluded about this universe and the situation we're in. So, maybe the first concept notion is that everything that is happening now is happening in eternity. In other words, eternity is happening now. It's not something that happens after we leave this place or something like that. Eternity is now, and everything that we're doing here has to reflect in eternity in order to sustain us. I've spoken on this before, that that's basically we have to, in one life, we have to achieve a maximal form of understanding. I've mainly written about this, or typed. A maximal understanding of our awareness and how that relates to the whole of creation, the whole of the universe, and basically the possibilities and potentials. And in one life we have to go through the entire wheel set and leave nothing unturned, nothing, left over. Otherwise, the image of one life won't be able to impress upon the whole of creation, and it won't basically make it to the finish line, if you will. And that's kind of confusing, at least in my opinion, the way I know the concept, but the words don't really provide a clear pathway. But it's like some of the other talks about how it's almost like a mandala or a geometrical shape, and that the complexity in one portion of it has to match up with the other portions, and then as such it has to match up to the whole. And if it doesn't, then there won't be a congruence, a continuance, or a correspondence from one iteration, one plane, one plane of reference to the next, or to the next iteration level of the whole. Remember, it's not endless iterations, because then you could just have some here and then some there and some there and just add them all up. No, it has to be complete in each one. That's the whole point, which is not difficult, but it's not the same as just winging it. Although it is kind of, because it's not the same as structuring it. It's feeling. It has to be spontaneous. And it's basically, there's guidelines that must be adhered to, and it's hard to describe what it is in terms of like right and wrong or a specific set of answers, because it's different for everyone. But basically, the feeling that you have must be maintained in the center of you as the source of the motivation of who you are and why you do what you do. Otherwise, something, if that fades, and it's allowed to fade because it's all free will, something else will utilize this space, the vessel, and this reality generation process, and will create, like an artist on a canvas, an existence that doesn't actually match up to who you truly are and who you are on the other side, on the soul level. And so it means a portion of your energy here will be devoted to something else. And so when everything's said and done, the soul level, trying to come back, or like looking back upon this physical experience, won't fully identify with 100% of it. And if it doesn't fully identify with 100% of it, then it doesn't identify it at all. It's basically seen as an imitation, or like a poor replication. And so we have to basically fully be for the soul, fully be who we are. Otherwise, it'll be a delay. There's no half effort. And it's about reality we're talking about here. We're not talking about whether you're going to get paid, you're going to have a receipt for buying a good life or something like that. It's whether that harmony that we experience here is actual harmony and not just motion and random noise. Because when it's harmonious, it means the notes that we experience in mind, body, or more so the emissions that we experience here, and the feelings, and then the actions that we participate in, and basically what we let in, what we push out or emit. And so that won't add up to what we perceive, or it's not what we perceive now, but it's more feeling, because perception and the mind is a confusion. It's like a labyrinth set up trying to use words to describe this. But who we are on another side, outside of time, is a pure harmony. So what we do here and who we are and how we feel, or it's more so how we interact with what we feel, because what we feel is pure harmony. You can't get around it. What we think doesn't have to be that way. We can make stuff up and go into abstract realms with our minds. And but it's a tool. And so it's like a magnifier. And so to fully be within the feeling of who you are, and just listening to your body and your soul in that sense, not the desires of your body, but the higher aspect of that. And if you listen to it, you just sense like a tuning fork, sympathetic resonance. If you live in that and act on that, and your body and your heart, but it's more so soul. I'm going to try and get away from using these vague words, although it's going to take forever. But what you feel in terms of what you don't have to have someone else describe, tell, or put in your mind from childhood or some other format, what's just plain already there, plain as day, okay, and night, is that's your soul. And living in that's how your soul finds expression here. If your soul doesn't find expression through these means, this avenue, this channel, but not like channeling or anything like that, but like literally like the channels of your spine, then something else is. And if it's something else, then what is being expressed here as your identity, as who you are, is not eternal. It's temporary, because it's not in actuality more like in a resonance. I want to say interface, but that there's like portals and weird stuff about that, how that can be like a corrupted, hijacked term. But it means that if it's for something else, because if it's for something else that's you're motivated by, you're chasing, or desires, whatever it is, well, there is nothing else. There's either the soul, and that is meant to mesh with this body, or there's external things, and there's no other like higher order of organism. There's just intermediaries, fallen or imposters, and so tricksters. And so it means basically it's either one or the other, but it's not as complex as like a mystical path or something like that. It's just what you feel. You have to live in the moment and live for that, and live in respect to that. And when that's done, what you feel is pure harmony, and what we are on the other side is pure harmony, because we only have this in-between light and dark shadow, this duality of where you can have substance and you have the background of substance that kind of like fills it in, as use its filler space. You only need that in a third dimension. You only need that in a picture when you're taking it in physical space, and you need depth perception and foreground and background, and clothes, and then stuff, and space between cells and atoms to make what the substance is. You don't need that in higher space. It's all in one. It's all pure energy. And so we have to acknowledge that. We have to live as a demonstration that we're saying, yep, we get it, and to the point where it's so obvious and so there's such a display that the soul could look down, not know English, not know human speak, not know physical speak, not have any concept of what this universe is about, and go, oh, there I am, that's me. Look at him go. Look at him or her go. Wow, great. Because if we're doing other stuff, the soul literally looks, and it's like a foreign language. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't speak our language. That's the whole point. And that's why it's vibration and frequency, because if we're writing, like, I'm just for the soul, it's all I do, it's the best, thank you soul, and then we go and have a party where it's like, we're for the soul, and then we go and live in just lowest vibrations of desires and even just depression or something like that. We're not living for the soul, we're living for this, the filler stuff, the imposter. And so it speaks frequency, is what I'm trying to say. And it's just harmony. That's because that's actually all that is. If you listen to music and there's harmonies, okay, well, if you hear either not a harmonious sound like a disharmony or like a discord, okay, or you hear empty space, okay, that's not the music. That's part of it, because you couldn't just have one big tone, and it wouldn't work that way. Like I said in the previous video, that space is required to have the substance, like in contrast to something else, but the actual substance is not that. And so it's when we look at what we are and what is actually there, it's actually just the harmony. But again, don't get caught up on the duality, because you can't have harmony without the background lack of anything. But it doesn't mean you have disharmony in the same song to have harmony, where like you just have a sax and it's just like random, and then you play like the song. You don't need that. It's just the fact that you know that there's not harmony in other songs, or if you've heard disharmonic sounds before, you get it doesn't have to be like smushed together. But that's part of this world where you're going to hear somebody play a sax, and it's not going to be pretty at some point in time. And if you hear that, it's probably going to sound beautiful. But well, it will as well, but it'll make the other music sound as beautiful or more beautiful. But as well, it's not that you need to hear somebody who can't play the sax. It's just that you hear a tree crashing or birds squawking, on like a slightly disharmonic, just random noise, your feet shuffling across the pavement, and there's a harmony and a rhythm, but it's just not musical or rhythmic and ascendant in that manner. Then you hear music, and it's beautiful. So you don't need to hear disharmonic sound. You don't need to hear or experience the height of suffering in order to get it. But some people do if they want to be resistant, but that's all up to them. And that's just the blueprint that we come into life with. But the idea is, it's all happening now. It's not something that's far off or later. What we do now is what we're doing in eternity. And it's just that it folds in different ways, shapes, or forms, to the point where if it's like a comic book, and each square is a moment, and they go on, until an end of life, but there is really none of that. It spirals on and on and on. Then each one is taken in eternity, and where it would be this one is square number 23 in a certain 23. That's a chaos number. So anyway, 32, 23. There's when it's a number of whatever consecutive order of square here linearly, okay, so from there it would literally be, you have this number square at this age or time, whatever, but then you could flip it sideways, or you could just have this one, and it normally goes along the timeline, but you could see it with depth forward and back, to the point where there's 1,000 different other possibilities that could be there. That's what happens, to the point where we have to be in the moment, where we're not polarized towards one or the other, because that will limit us into basically one frequency set, and in eternity we'll very quickly accumulate all of those, and it'll get basically boring, and eventually, if it doesn't add up to the complexity of what is required to navigate through all the spectrums and eventually get what it's all about, get what life is about, get what the soul is trying to tell us through this experience, through our expression, and basically spell out the meaning of God and lead ourselves back into the highest potential, then it's kind of like being trapped in eternity, or in the lower realms or something like that, and eventually there's a disillusion and the pathway is gone. But it doesn't mean that the soul dies. It means that it bounces from that square set of perceptions in the physical, which is a limited storyline, and it evolves into another one. But it means that one has to be left behind. And nobody dies. It doesn't happen that way. It's just the artist paints a new comic book to make it work, or a strip. The point is that if we're living in polarization, then each comic strip is going to be stuck on a particular trend that is limited towards a centralized idea, that if it's determined by the ego, then it will be wrapped around a very limited set, which will be based upon a biased format, a biased set of parameters. Whether it's your preference about a sensation, or fear that it doesn't let certain parameters through, anything lower limits the experience. And so if we stay within that throughout life and we don't overcome that, there is a very diminished possibility of return, if not any possibility of return. When we overcome all the fears, the desires, all the polarity, limitations of consciousness of the ego mind, the imposter, then each square of the moment, even though it seems one way now, if we're totally at peace with whatever's happening, from the higher perspective, it literally means this moment can be changed and shifted in angles and seen in a different way. And right now we're, like riding a ski boat or something like that, or a jet ski or something. It means that this moment is actually meshable by frequency of what we're experiencing. If we're just like a character in a script, and you strip away the props and strip away the setting, and you fit that frequency into another one, the person who's totally expanded and relaxed and accepting of what is happening and at peace, you can fit that one in any other scene. You can put him in China, you can put him in, I measured China and Japan. You can put him in or her in any scene, any location, any place where there's like recreation or learning, wisdom, even certain difficult experiences. And if they're okay in the sense that they have maintained through it and didn't snap and get caught up in one hate or lower attraction or an addiction aspect of one or the other, of just simply how you perceive yourself. If you're not in the ego or the illusory perception of the self dependent on the particular bias in a given physical environment or a temporal setting, if you know it's an illusion to a certain degree, this is an illusion that means not literally like it's all just bull, but if you know it's actually reflecting in all other places and you have that in mind, then the you that is here can be picked up out of this comic book strip square and put into any other one. More so the guy or lady that has the most expanded perception, and that's kind of like, these are vague terms, but the one who is the least attached to the self of the particular scene. That frequency where it's just a glowing frequency of being, like at the end of the movie Knowing, or The Matrix, or something like that, where they're just frequencies. And there's some other ones. If a person realizes that's what it actually is, then from the higher level, just by shifting perspective, that scene and set can be stripped away, and that person can be, or the identity, the soul, can be put in any other scene or set. And it's like the photon bouncing around being all of reality, and you're literally over there, and over there, over here, and over there, and you can become a complete universe to yourself. In doing that, your soul embodies all the faces of God, all the aspects, the avenues back to heaven, if you will. And it doesn't get trapped not having a pathway back up to the parameters, the possibilities of a particular life into eternity. And the idea is that it literally means that the life continues forever. That where we perceive a death happening in one way or another, if you're free enough of mind, you'll wake up in another one where it never died, never ended. And that happens until the entire universe reaches completion, meaning only a specific family of people continues to do that, a soul, a family of like the cosmic family, and you just have to not hold on to one particular comic book strip at a time or square, and it's I know it's very vague here, and kind of like super transcendent to make sense of that, but the idea is if it's all frequencies and we're holding on to it like it's specific to the point where we won't accept that it's not what it seems, then from the other side, the identity that we're in here won't mesh with any other possibility. We won't be able to like break it down and put ourselves in another situation, and if that occurs, there's no avenue for the soul to continue expressing itself, and it means there's a second death where it goes in eternity and it doesn't last all the way through, which is, it's in a transcendent ascendant pattern where it's not eternal, it's just it maximizes the rate of increase until all possibilities are experienced. And it's like it's a given percent of time, like a given run, like we all have to do our cosmic run, and everything will be experienced that we could possibly potentially experience given our personality set, like a blueprint for the soul. So when it's personality, the personality set is like, has all these angles and they're out of congruence and out of alignment, and some are missing and they're not really there, and where this one could be here and you can now mesh with these other experiences, it's missing, so you only have access to a specific set here, and at that point your soul runs through those experiences, and then where it could continue and make the whole like tree of life or the whole pattern of the cosmos, those are missing. Okay, that would be basically a second death, and it's in eternity there, which is like a singularity, but it's happening now. We're building eternity now. That's the whole point. And again, the idea is just realizing that we're frequencies, and having this type of selflessness which is kind of like a selfishness because we're actually connecting with the real self, not the avatar. And in that sense, we can basically be anything. But it's not that we're like not real here, or we're just going to make up some other us. It's that the one we make up will be us here, and it's going to be there and there and there because that's who we are. And it's like being truly versatile on a soul level, to the point where we can connect, and it's literally like the 360 degrees with the star in the middle, or the sun, and being able to realize we're the circle. We're not one point there, one point there. It's the whole thing. When you can do that, you can become the sun, which is some type of a radiant process in hyperspace where you make all possible realities, all potentials, and you go through a spectrum of the possible from the lowest to the highest, and it encompasses everything. At that point, you max out your avatar as a human and all the realities that are dreamt up, and it's like merging with the mind of God or something like that, where there's no end. And when there's no end, it's like an eternal person. It means if there are other universes, other realities, other times where, say, this civilization ends, well, if there are other ones that continue, just like in a certain life that ends, well, if there's another possibility that continues, you have to allow your frequencies to go to that one because that'll happen anyway. But say if this civilization ends, but there's another timeline or something where it continues, okay, unless the person can merge with that frequency set and they're not, stuck on this one, then they'll either not merge with that one, and it'll be a timeline where there's a lot less people for whatever reason. Maybe there never were so many people. Has to do with this like replication system thing. Or it'll be that they merge there, but they have no memory of coming from there, from here to there, and it'll be like a complete wipe. And that's what a lot of the sacred arts teach, of maintaining memory, dying consciously, and jumping basically parallels while awake. And in doing that, certain beings realized that's what's happening, and that they have this good thing going here where they can feed off of people's negative energy, and their best bet is to keep everybody asleep. And so with that said, free will is the law. No one can be saved or taken without meeting sufficient free will requirements. And so there's a bunch of methods for that, and this is about the hijacking of DNA as a type of quantum internet or hyperspace port to heaven out of the collapsed artificial system, which is just saying when there's enough like retrograde or degradation or decay in a certain scene or set, or a civilization set, like a personality, they decay, their body decays when they're not freeing up the energy of mind and body to the point where eventually their body holds up the energy and it gets built up, and it builds up into the disease. So imagine a civilization doing that, and eventually there's always going to be that jump to the one that doesn't have that and is healed. And so DNA is like the unlock code, because that's a recording of every choice we've ever made. It's a recording of every choice our ancestors ever made. It's a recording of what possibilities we can merge with in the future, and that's where that whole process comes down to. It's literally energetic, harmonized. It's like we're strumming strings or something for like a harp. Okay, well that's your emotions and your choices, and it's recording, and recorded, kind of like like a magnetic tape or something in the DNA. That's the whole point. So the situation with free will and then the beings trying to hijack stuff is they're trying to mutate people's DNA and genetics so that they can't leave this place and they can rule over them forever until it collapses. Which is their doing, because when they created a well of degradation and decay that they have to keep up and maintain, eventually that's going to turn into a big snowball effect, and it's going to wipe everything out. And so it's part of a game they're playing, but as well, it's all free will, and that has to do with the beings that are outside of the game parameters, because they're playing their own game. And so more on I can't believe it's 24 minutes. More on the notion of the mind, or maybe the game that's played and the way that works. So basically, when we're looking for peace or happiness and joy, and happiness is dualized, peace means, what is it, pax, which has something to do, I think that phonetically relates to tax or something like that, I can't remember, where like a form of spiritual war means peace if you go back to original etymology. But the basic understanding of when looking for joy, when looking for contentment, but as well neutrality, neutral contentment, and a self-empowerment in knowing who we are, and a type of energetic or spiritual, but more so that means feeling like sovereignty, and that means, you know, we're secure in who we are and how we feel, meaning we don't need stuff to take pills or whatever, certain foods. When we look for it, it basically is telling us that we don't have it. Remember the duality game. Everything we think is happening, well, at least it means the opposite of that is being created instantly, and it may be that both are happening simultaneously, not neither, but not necessarily one or the other, but both are happening, and we're just seeing one side of the coin by going into basically using the mind to define the situation for who we are, and using words and categorization and classification, where if we just go straight to feeling, it's like, you know, there's no question what's vibrating or what frequency wise is disturbing somebody, you know, literally what it is, a person, a substance, a location, requirement, restriction, a thought form, you know, or thought form entity, anything like that. If we don't have ideas to say, well, this is how it is, or it's okay, it's just what everyone does, or whatever, you know, if we just feel it, like if we didn't speak this language as a society, no one would have the problems that this society brings, because you would feel exactly what's wrong and you would back away from it. So the idea is when we're chasing something mentally, coming up with these programs and methods, and, you know, a lot of times listening to others, you know, sans maybe, I mean, you should, if you're listening to me and looking for answers that are supposed to be found by you, then you're going to open up suffering. You know, not sans me, everything. And so, but the point is that it's maybe not meant to be transcended, but to find the path is through transcendence. Meaning every day that we're looking for it, that's the day you find it. The fact that you realize that it's in your method of looking for it that's pushing it away. It's in your mind, and it's not something that you can find through steps. It's something you accept that you already have. It's a paradox, but that's what it is. And it's because who you are is what you need to be secure and sovereign, and who you are is free. You don't have to do anything to be you. You already are you. You can't not be it. You can't not be you. You can't not be free. But we have all these games, and every plan is unique. And so every day is the day that this is found, because even if you don't realize it, you still have it. So every day that you look for it, you found it. That's the whole point. We just overlooked the fact that we did it. We did it. We did what we needed to do. We came to our acknowledgement that there's something that we can have, and that we want it. Well, there you go. You got it. It's free. It doesn't require anything to get. You just make a decision to have it. It's just being, having joy and security. And there are, fundamental biases or limitations, such as like if you're starving or something, but eventually I'll get into that. So every moment is the moment that it's found. It's the same as like, it's just going to be the day I find love or happiness or stability or whatever it is, okay, and then maybe later on that day you forget. Every moment, how many times throughout the day does that thought recur? And you sit there and wonder, can I gain a control over my own beliefs, my own thoughts, my own emissions, okay? That moment, that was it. In asking that question, that was you gaining control. That was you doing what you needed to do. All you have to do is accept it from there, and that's kind of like playing a game. It's like hopscotch, where you set up the linear, excuse me, my mustache has been doing stuff lately. You set up the game that's like linear from there, and then eventually you just jump off. You're good. You finished it. You got to the end. The numbers don't add up. It's not supposed to. I mean, they do technically, but it's not consecutively. It's just whenever you feel it. And that's how the energy basically is. If you try and count it up through the mind, like the 7-step process for this, it's not going to mean anything. It's not going to do anything. And if it works, good for you. It was an accident. It was a fluke. It was you making it work, because you can sit there and make it 1,000 steps, 90 steps, 1 step, 3 steps. It doesn't matter. 3 is usually easiest, beginning, middle, and end. But that's how it works. And so not only is it like every day, well, it's every moment, every single moment, to the point where it's like, did I find it? No, I didn't. And then think of it again and keep doing that until you realize you did find it. You found it in the moment. Because if you think every day I have to wait, and next day, and the next days, there's always tomorrow, and there's more chances, You have 1,000 chances per second. Okay, technically you only can have about like 3 or 4 thoughts a second, and there's like 7 moments in a second or something like that, according to how the brain works. I think like 11 is a higher higher estimate or something like that. I can't think of the word. I can't think of a lot of the words. Anyway, but that's the point. It's not day, it's not life, it's not great big opportunity. It's literally every single moment, multiple times a second, that you can sit there and just snap to and be like, I'm not playing that game anymore, I'm making my own rules. And that's what this whole universe is about, is making your own rules. It's not, if you play, that's why they say it's architect. And it's skewered for the past age of history. Maybe not the whole thing, but the past age of history, owned by Satan. And it's actually Lucifer. But, or even Satan, depends. Satan, no. There's not information about who's who, how they're different, what's the real meaning, how some of it is reversed, and the good is the bad is good, and there's a lot to talk about. But the idea is this: maybe not the whole thing is skewered in a prison, but this past age of history is. If you play by those rules, you will lose. Unless you're playing by those rules to suffer people, to cause suffering, and to revel in suffering and darkness. If you're trying to find harmony and peace by those rules, you lost. You already lost. That's how it's set up. And those rules, by the way, are null and void. From all the systems, they're null and void. There was a contract between the non-human entities and the current ruling elite, or the previous ruling elite of the old world, and the contract was up. There was a certain amount of years, a certain amount of time, a certain amount of cycles of history, and, like days, whatever you want to call days, and it's up, it's done. That contract is literally over. It's not allowed. They can't enforce it anymore. They don't. But if you could enforce it on yourself, well, shoot. If you put a leash on and walk yourself down the street, nobody's gonna stop you. Well, at least not until you start asking questions like, "Am I free? Why am I doing this?" Then people can drop little hints everywhere, and that's what's beginning to happen in the entire civilization. And again, why do you think it's happening now? It's because contracts are over. The doors are open, and of course everybody's like looking at the ground, checking their phones and stuff. Might use a phone for a lot, but I use it for stuff like this. It's just weird. Everybody's trapped inside, and they open the doors, and everybody's just like complaining. The doors are open. What does that mean? Anyway, what it means is that they still want to know, that they want to learn how to be joyous and happy. Apparently, they didn't get it yet. You decide. You're not going to find it in there. You're not going to find the key in the light under the spotlight because you lost it in the dark. That's the whole point. Every moment is when it's found, when you accept it, and even when you don't realize it, and it means your mind chooses. You choose. It's really when your mind gets the F out the way and your feeling is allowed to be, and you're allowed to be. And so this is through a relaxation or cessation of the desire to continually project outward the desire to locate the object of such desires. Meaning the mind is designed to perceive out here. Joy is something within. How are you going to use an outward looking spotlight to find something that's behind the spotlight? It's pretty much basic system right there, geometry or like logistics. It's like the basic fundamental notion that is backwards when we try to do it that way. You can find a lot of middlemen. You can find a whole host of middlemen. Literally a whole host of hell. You can find them all. And but ultimately it's up to you. So that is the source of the illusion, and thus the source of unhappiness, or the lack of self-awareness, the lower self-awareness, where we confuse what we find out here with what is within. They can't mix. It's like oil and water. What's in can't ever be what's out. We can only have this game where it's like a bunch of mirrors and we're shining different ways and projecting shapes on the walls and getting this material world, but we're not actually here. We can't be. It's impossible. How could that be? Why would we need bodies? And never mind. Don't say you're the body, because that's the whole point. Then who's watching? And so every moment that there is the sensation of unhappiness or lack, and this is the whole point of duality. Every moment there's one, there's the other. So every moment there is a sensation of unhappiness or lack, there is the opportunity to experience fulfillment, the fulfillment of inner presence and joy, which is through the free will to embody that. So basically just your free will. Every time you sit there and wonder about what you're lacking, you have that's your free will poking its head out like a meerkat or something, saying like, are you gonna use me? Like, is this your moment? Is this your time? and but you embody it because you're looking for yourself. That's what makes us happy. That's what makes us enjoy. It's us being us. That's the whole point. You don't have something else to be you. That would mean fundamentally that you're incomplete. Well, you are incomplete because you think you need other things to make you you. That's the whole point. It's a perspective. And so by realizing you're you and you don't need anything, you're complete. And it's really the illusion of incompletion and the reality of completion. And we're stuck in illusion running around with these games, and you got this rodeo clown roping everybody in using the I always forget, Apocalypto, thanks, I don't know the name of the guy. I remember that like right after the that part of the talk. It was the movie from the last one. Differential is the other word that I was thinking of, like a time differential between, it's like a ratio of ratios. In cars, transmission works that way. But I can't think of the word I was thinking of that. When I'm in the talk, I like the bull, the guy that throws the cape around for the bull. Why is that? So that's how society's run. They're doing that with people. All they have to do is stop and look and say, oh, there it is. I found it. It's literally like we have necklaces on that have what we're looking for in them, and people are going like, it's over there, it's over there, it's over there. And all you have to do is go, I found it. It was right here the whole time. That's the whole point. And the society is literally based upon that, to the point where it's a charades. It's a game. The point is, it's a game of souls. The Game of Thrones is not toys and TV show and guys just like playing, swords with their little toy soldiers. We're the soldiers. It's our lives. It's a real game. The game is more real than any other concept of what we have here. But the point is, it's a game because that's how they're playing us. And that's how people are allowing it. But as well, it goes back to these other situations with the automatons and things like that. So the fulfillment is free. The inner presence is free because it is us. When we are full of ourselves rather than illusion or imitation, we are self-aware. We know the self. When we know the self, there's some harmony between what's within and what we experience without in the material world. When there's a harmony, the two scenes correspond. The strip of whatever's going on up here or down here in the feeling, it lines up, it harmonizes, it resonates in sympathy and makes sense with this external projection out here. When the two are out of sync, you can't get anywhere. There's no way to sit here and be out of sync with what you're experiencing out here and the choices that are made externally and what you're feeling within. When the two are out of sync, there's only suffering. When they're in sync, there's only joy. It doesn't matter. That's where the starvation or imprisonment or certain things like that, like oppression, can be overthrown. You can't sit there and be happy to be in pain, but you can't let it, you can overcome the suffering with joy and harmony and how you react to situations. And instead, if it's not reacting, you're not automated, you're not living like a robot, you're choosing. When you're choosing, whenever you have the choice, it's expression of the soul, and the expression of the soul is worth more than the material world altogether. The whole material world, because the soul made the whole material world to express itself. That's the whole point. It's a game. It's not their game, it's our game. And but that's the point. Along with that harmony and knowing the self, that's one first step of joy, of cosmic joy, knowing the self and being having that knowledge to know the self and align in harmony what's within with what is without, and as well through that applying our free will to express how we feel, which is the expression of the soul. Those two elements equal joy because they're the reason this all exists. If there was no soul, there was no free will, there was no expression, none of this would be here. You can't have just robots here, it doesn't work. It's like a trickle-down system where there has to be higher intelligence, cosmic intelligence, to be present in the humans through some type of process where the energy expresses itself here, and eventually the DNA ticks around the right way, and you end up with knowledge. You end up with internal knowledge that never was created, never ended, never dies, never leaves, coming through people, pouring through people, and it's literally artwork and like a cosmic intelligence and knowledge. It's not informationally based. It is like some type of knowingness is basically self-knowledge, self-awareness, how you feel, and how you feel relates to the universe, and how that corresponds to some higher intention that's knowledge, and it never leaves. You can't break it, you can't do anything. People can forget certain languages, people can forget certain, like mechanical tools, or there can be a one way of doing something mechanically and another way. The knowledge of the self is never over, never ends, and it's never incomplete. Every single bit of it is always the intentions of a cosmic source stepping down into the human when there is that feeling, and that feeling is being expressed through free will and harmony. Again, the destruction of free will, destruction of harmony in others, and production of chaos, that's the cosmic oppressor, the cosmic imitator, imposter, or the deceiver, or the cosmic, what's the other word? Again, another word for Satan, the adversary, the cosmic adversary, which is when there's something that challenges our harmony, and so on and so forth. And so, so when we're full of ourselves rather than full of the illusion of the imitation, we are only on the path to joy, and ultimately, as well as the free will and the harmony within, without knowing the self within, therefore without the free will activating, making the choices in the free will based upon the feeling, therefore soul expression, and that next, the third, this is like the three, with that expression, you have creation. Once we go through those, we're creating, we become creators, and we're creating the realm. Nothing can overcome that. It doesn't matter where you are or what happened to you. If you're doing those, what you're doing is more powerful than every portion in this realm, and the adversary is only the portion of ignorance in between the wholeness, because the wholeness is what's always there, if you will, the lines of reason that go back to source, and the separation, the ignorance, is just little bits on the outside that separate what's there and give reason for duality and contrast, and therefore experience filler to make this realm what it is. In the original realm, there's no need for darkness, so there's not like the lines. Say it's a circle, and you have lines or dots like the hours of a clock, and they're light, and the light goes all into the center. And then in between those, you have the filler, or the darkness, the ignorance, the moments between, whatever you want to call it, and that is required in the physical world to have anything. You can't. We'd literally all be one big blobulous organism. It doesn't work that way. And even in the other side, we're set up in frequency bands, but we're all one organism of mind and being and feeling. The idea is the lines go back to the center, but darkness doesn't go all the way back. It just happens on this spherical outer ridge or circular edge, and it's because when we get all the way back, we're in a source dimension, a higher dimension, and there's no need for space, there's no difference or contrast, because it's folded in between all spaces of this one space. So there's no darkness, there's no separation, there's no need for that. It's not computed in. So, it only occurs out here. The ignorance, the darkness, it's not actually necessary in there, and it doesn't exist. When we view ourselves in that way, in the fullness, then in the same sense, we are full when we are empty. And all the stuff that's out here, this is some of that paradoxical talk. All the stuff that's out here, when we try and fill ourselves with it, whether it's food, sensation, information, opinion, materialism, basically materialism, desire, sensory desire. That's the the basic things. And then the lower immaterial senses, the refined subtle senses, which are not refined because they're gross, of pride and ego and things like that, which to have those, you have to have the materials. You can't just be, I'm proud. Why? Because I don't have anything. What? It doesn't make sense. So those are the gross emotions and feelings that are close to this realm. Then you have the refined one, where it's I'm at peace because I'm basically empty, and I'm full of spirit. Okay, at that point, it's, well, how do you show that? Because you have stuff and things. Well, not really. You could say indirectly there are certain things, but if you're ever like, that's because of that. Yeah, this is why. Because I have a cup of coffee jar. Well, no. Then you miss the point, and it doesn't make sense, and it opens up into a contradiction at that point. Because how are you? How are you having this if you're not here? And it gets into all the fundamentals, the reasons, the schematics for who you are, what you are, if you're not the body. That's the basic, foundation of how to be who you are and how to have what you need and do what you're supposed to do, and organize that according to a spectrum, because the fundamental is that there's a delusion or a kind of gradient shift where we're not the body. So if we stick with that, then, and only that, it detracts from that higher format where it's as if we're not giving ourselves what we want. And you go along and fully just treat your body, just only stuff that makes nervous interactions and sensation, treat yourself that way. You'll get very depressed soon because you're the feeling that's watching the body, that's in the body, and is visiting, and you're taking care of the body like it's on lease or something. And as well, you didn't create the body. You have something here, and you either buy it from somebody, a car or a computer or something like that. All right, well, somebody made it. You have something that you made here. Okay, well, you know everything about it and you did it. It's the same thing. You have the body. You didn't make the body. You either bought it from somebody, or you leased it from somebody, or you found it and stole it. Basically, we have those three options here on Earth right now. If people did all three to get here. But the idea is that paradoxical sense of when we're full, when we're empty we're full spiritually when we're empty materialistically. And it's because we are the observer, clear and free from the impressions of the external world. Meaning, you don't have to be in the world, but you're not of it. We've heard that before. But the idea is that you realize, don't forget, you're just observing. Don't attach. It's like a dream state. There are many experiments from thought experiments, like I said before, to actual really weird experiments that a lot of them either don't get attention or they're cut out of history. Some of Maxwell's equations, this is what I was informed, were altered. I think it was like the third one was altered. Conservation of energy and some other part of it, because it teaches you how to make free energy, and the free energy system is the system of the soul. It's how you're here, eternally observing. That's the whole point. The body has a boundary limit. You have perceptual limits. You have energy requirements. There's a finite system that the body runs on. That's like a track. It's like a car on a track or something like that, or cuckoo clock or a cuckoo bird on the cuckoo clock is on that track. Your soul isn't. I mean, it is because it's watching the body right now, and these bodies are measured through that, and so that it can get entrained, which could be the loss of the soul if you fully identify with the physical body. But if the physical body identifies with the soul, we have the opposite of that, where now it's like an immortalization. But to do that, we have to realize the illusion, the trick, the grand design, the architecture, the mass delusion that's taking place, where we're observing what's happening here, but we're not fully here. We can't fully be here, because then there would be no other. There would be nothing to continue. It would be finite. Everything that would be or could be would be all in one, and that's impossible, because how do you have everything in a limited spectrum? It'd be like if you could put spectrum. It'd be like if you could put the whole universe in a box. That's impossible. It doesn't make sense. How can you put all of everything in something else? You can't. There's no thing that holds everything, because you'd have something else to hold everything. It's impossible. It's a paradox. So the idea is, whenever you have something in all things, and you're like, this is it, got everything. Or it's the hexagon, whatever, pentagon, whatever universal shape you're coming up with, fractal, whatever. Well, as soon as you have it, you instantly create a mirror version of doubling that and expanding beyond, because you can never actually box everything in. The only way is to not have any conceptions and just let it go blank-minded, and that's how you can have everything. That's one of the big secrets. By going blank, by going empty, clear mind, that's how you can embody all the yous that are outside of this particular comic strip and, in a way, interface with multiple parallels. And when you're doing that, you're larger, you're bigger, you're more expansed than the you are here. But it's not because you grew different arms or something like that. It's because the frequency that you are here begins to overlap, cross over and encompass more than just the one that's limited by this particular body and mind. And you literally become, it's like literally a bleed through, as if you took that comic strip and then you have another layer, another layer, another layer, another, and they're smushed over. At first it's just one, and you're going this way. You stop and slow down and merge into that one. It's as if you take 5, 10, 20, 1,000 different layers and you merge them together and overlay them, and you become all those layers in one moment. But the idea is, as soon as you go, I got a message or something like that, or whatever it is, and it draws you out of that into a particular channel or avenue or pathway of experience that is relative to only this external world, that's when you drop out of that multitude and you come back to a singular reality at that point, which is part of how either end of the spectrum of duality, polarity, of attachment to one or the other, you're neutral because you're both of them. Whatever you can conceive, it means you're the spectrum of you're the entire spectrum of what you can and cannot or would be on the other end of the spectrum. If you can see the both, that's literally your maximal perception. It means you're a accordion. You're like the cutouts with the multiple people or kids or something. Where I don't know if you've ever done that in school, where you can cut a bunch of folded piece of paper and then stretch it out and they're all like holding hands. The spectrum of one and the other, of one belief and the opposite of that belief, which whatever it is, and that's why religions and certain things, when they're strict on these beliefs, it actually sets up a parameter system where a person gets trapped within it if they're not careful. Because it should be, true religions was, okay, these are beliefs. All right, now you and like this is reality, and this is, like the opposite is also what it is, and everything in between. And now it's just like this is what it is, and what is that? It's what it is. It's all it is. How can you have everything what it is in one? You can't. I'm rambling here, but some people will get it. Maybe everybody will. But the point is, when we have one or the other, it's literally the format is that we have that one that we think it is, and then the opposite of that we're like, I'm positive this isn't what is happening, whether it's a belief system or a shape of reality or a preference about certain thing or how an event went down. What it actually is that there's the opposite, or the one end and the other end. Everything in between that happens and has happened, and we're creating that spectrum by first having one, then having two, doubling, and then creating a plethora, an expanse between them by kind of rotating those up, and you get this arc curve, this form of geometry. Energy does that. We're doing it in hyperspace by basically having a single point, then going to a line, and then the line becomes like a plane, which is semicircular from that concept, but it's actually like a spiraled circle, which doesn't really make sense, but they expand and go on, so on and so forth. And so don't get caught up on sacred geometry, because there's a modified version of it, which literally is like a soul trap. Although there's make your own sacred geometry when you figure out how your thoughts go, starting with what you're experiencing in the now. The idea is, because it's that spectrum, what you really want to do, if you want to experience it all and get to the maximal self, to the point where you come back around, then you're everything. You literally, is like, where is he not? He's in all the dimensions. He's in all the parallels. He's in every universe. He's just, it's like, where's Waldo? Just pops up in the ocean over there, Antarctica over there, Brazil, you're right there underground over here. Just, it doesn't go away. You take one parallel and the other, meaning where your maximal limit is, and what you can't believe because it can't be true, and this must be the real belief, whichever one it is, and you take that and you realize they're actually the same thing, just facing other directions, and you're just drawing a curve down, and you realize that everything that could be, everything that can't be based upon those ideas are actually happening and are real, and they must be in order for you to get to these points. But the point is, because it's conscious that you have to go through that, it's that you're sliced over in seeing one or the other, and that's part of the dual mind system. The other two are energetic. They don't exist physically, but they have to in higher dimensions in order to make both of the basic realities occur. And there's a universe we're in now, and there's a mirror verse, and those two exist. And whoever's in one point and the other point, and if they're maximally opposing, but they're conscious of both, and in that way all the possibilities throughout, that means that they exist consciously in both mirror verses, and as well in energetic format that we can't see but can be mapped out on these computer systems or these geometrical forms or soul charts or something like that. They are encompassing all the possibilities in their soul. When a person does that and they're not leaving anything out in eternity, and they do that in one life with enough choices that maxes out who they are given that particular avatar or blueprint, it means they can merge into eternity. They can take the image and the frequency mesh of up and down and this type of spiral and all that of one life, and it can go into any different realm, any different universe, any different reality, and it doesn't ever die. It's a frequency that never ends, because it contains all the possibilities of the different, there are enough cubes, enough comic strip squares with enough variance in situations and freedom based upon the frequency of the person, the feeling, okay, in the mind, that you can take that format, that schematic of that individual system, and you can mesh those cubes up in a billion different ways to the point where it never ends. And you never run out of material. You never run out of information. And at that point, it's not information, but soul experience and knowledge. There's no point where it gets to a barrier and it's like, this can't be, because I didn't perceive that in my physical life. Therefore, I'm just staying here. The point is to get through all frequencies and make it back to heaven. And the only way is to go through everything, because that's what God did to make it all. So joy is when there are no restrictions of one's presence, and the initial restriction is the perception of the lack of joy. The perception is from the non-self impressing upon the true self, and then the imitation, which means that the primary duality is to believe that we are the body, we are in the body, and that only what we're experiencing here and now is occurring, and in the same sense that in order to find joy, or in order to have joy, we must first find joy, because of course to think that thought, we clearly don't have joy. It's an illusion. Once you realize it's an illusion, it undoes that, it untangles that knot. It seems like it can't be so. Why would we look for it if we have it? Why do you look for keys when you sometimes have them in your hand? That's what we're doing for the past 6,000 years, or 2,000, 10,000, whichever one you want to look at it. And it's because somebody's going, you're looking for your keys, or they're over here jingling like random metal objects, and they're like throwing rocks over there into a pile of metal stuff. I think they're over there. Somebody's distracting everybody so efficiently throughout, so many different methods that people have been doing it for a long time. And it's really the point of herd mentality, to the point where you can go home and it's like, I found my keys, I got them, they were on my neck the whole time. And you go out in public and everybody's like, where's keys? I bet those aren't your keys, I don't know whose keys those are. It's like, I'm pretty sure they're my keys, this is what my keys look like. And everybody's like, nah. And instantly in a day of that, we go, these can't be my keys, I have to keep looking for them. It's a herd mentality, it's hypnotism. All it is a group effect. There's a consensus effect, or a confirmation bias. There's all these psychological methods, and Psych 101, you go through the beginning of those in studying sociology and things like that. But it's a mass delusion, and confirmation bias and selective attention. We have the keys the whole time. We're there in our hands, or around our neck, right below our breastplate, and everything that's out there is, you need this, you need your keys, buy your keys here, buy something that looks like your keys. You want your keys? No one has keys. Keys, I hate keys because they're so not here, they're never here, F keys. That's all you see out there. The TV, the people, school system, social system, whatever it is, clubs, whatever. This is either F finding keys because it's hopeless, or it's, you don't need keys, we got this. That's what this society is based upon. Sounds like a game, sounds like a joke. It's our souls. The keys are our souls, our keys to eternity. And all it is joy. That's it. When you put those frequencies out, and it meshes with the harmony of within and without, you know yourself, you merge into eternity. And you never die. Strange thing, I'm going to end it there because I'm going to make another one right after this, I guess. But the strange thing is that when you can continue on with the parameters, you don't get caught up like it's like when your frequency gets limited down to the lower spectrum and it's on that outside instead of in the central point. It has to, whatever happens next has to match that spectrum, and it has to be linear or consecutive. So if we ever have an eternal aspect of what we can be, and we have to merge back with God, and we're stuck in limited outer surface world area, like proximal borderland of the universe of mind and spirit, well, we run out of material, we run short, we run dry of feeling, and eventually that's the dissolution of the soul. And again, nothing dies, it just goes back, but we don't consciously take all our memories and remember, like, oh, that was the journey, because we don't connect a journey from here linearly, counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up into this like symbiotic Mobius strip of eternity, because it's not a merge, it's a same concept of going asleep and waking up in a dream, or being in a dream and coming into wakefulness in your room. The exact moment that you cross over, there's no perspective, there is no perception, because what would it be perceived as? There's nothing to perceive. It's a singularity switching. It's like a mirror where you shut the mirror or something and you see all the angles and they close out. There's no real way to describe what it is. It's a meshing between two worlds. That has to do with what I'm going to talk about next, how the simulation idea, the concept, is the fact, the notion, unless you never dreamt before, yeah, you could say it's a fact, because there's situations and theories of that, but the idea is that's going from one world to the next, or from one phase of consciousness to another, to the point where it vibrates into a shift, and they mesh just like a dissolve effect on an image, where one image dissolves into the other image. That's literally how one civilization, one world goes to the next, one reality flips over to the other. At this point, we don't see the dissolve because it's just a clean cut. But the point is, because it's a clean cut, we have no memory of the effect even happening. It's like we have the last 5 minutes of what kind of went on, and then all of a sudden we wake up here in another one. It's the same thing with dreaming. We're just bouncing around, when in actuality there's a smooth transition, and we have to make that smooth transition in order to get there, otherwise we lose the memory because it doesn't continue. It doesn't have a consecutive continuity between it. And it's not consecutive, it's ascendant, it's exponential, it's like a perceptual fuzzy logic way of transitioning instead of using a whole number linear math or a number set theory. I think it goes into fuzzy math and these like fractal mathematics, which I learned a little bit about in some of these courses, basically these how to be human and also be immortal courses. Alright, I'm gonna calm down. It's a lot of coffee, not too much. I couldn't drink coffee for a while there, and I still get fluttery a little bit, but I'm pretty sure some of the recent events they have basically ways of entity attachment. They attach entities to the DNA, and the entities, some of them have separated. And strangest thing, but that's the entities are the cause of death and aging. Big surprise, big whoop. We're already immortal. It has to do with the last talk, inside job and all that. Alright, thank you.